Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this edition of Generally Irritable. Sunday, November 6th, 2 days before the 2022 midterm elections. It's pretty exciting over here at the Reddick House. I can tell you that much. What's really more interesting, though, is is a case I learned about, or a situation here in Vermont that I learned about just in the last couple of months. Excuse me, guys. I got a little. Give me a second. Oh, I got a little tickle in my throat. All right, you guys. Just so you know, Benjamin told me I need to start stalling at the beginning of the show a little bit to start letting people come on, get logged in. So this is what I'm doing. I'm stalling a little bit. But in all seriousness, and you guys, this is a pretty serious episode. You know, a lot of times I bring you conversations with energy experts and, other candidates, politicians. We're talking about, should we legalize marijuana? What about abortion? All kinds of different things. A couple of months ago, it was brought to my attention that there is a place called Kurn Hattin Homes for Children. And apparently, over the last many, many decades, something like 80 years, there have been allegations of abuse, reports of abuse that have come from this facility, both to Vermont State Police, to DCF, and a number of other places. And what happened was all of these problems were just sort of swept under the rug for a really long time. One person who was committing some of this abuse was prosecuted, but that's just one over the course of many years, and then the problems didn't stop. So it was fascinating that one week I got multiple emails from people telling me about this place, asking if I would bring some light to the issue. And then one day, driving through Woodstock on the way to a campaign event, there was a man with a sign on the side of the road also talking about this place, Kurn Hattin. And I got to tell you guys, when I started digging into it and I started reading the accounts of the I guess I have to say alleged victims until it's been prosecuted. Our today's guest is going to tell me. We're going to ask him. His name is Thomas Bixby. He's the first attorney to bring suit against Kurn Hattin for the alleged abuses. So he's coming on to let us know about the case, about the victims, what's going on, and I just hope that you guys will all spread the word, spread the message. Interestingly enough, this episode has already been shared several times before it aired. So just posting that I was going to be talking to Thomas sparked a lot of interest. So it seems that either it just seems like there's a lot of people who are really interested in the case. So you guys, I really want you to share this video. Make sure you go down, like this video, share it with your friends and family. Let them know that we've got some folks who are really trying to get something done here. Whatever happened to Jessica Lee Smith? Postcards from the bottom. I saw this posted earlier. So we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna ask some questions. We're gonna have some interesting conversations and find out some of this. So everybody, welcome Mr. Thomas Bixby, attorney in Rutland. Oh, goodness gracious. Hold on one second, Thomas. I thought for sure I turned my phone off. I failed, you guys. This is like total failure right off the bat. I was sure my phone was off. Thomas, thank you for coming on tonight. How are you, sir?
I am well, Erica. Thank you for having me, and I really appreciate it. And I wish you all the best on
Thank
Tuesday.
you. Thank you.
Going for you.
Well, you know what? Elections have consequences. And interestingly enough, one of those consequences is what kinds of issues get brought to light and dealt with at the legislative level. So I want to take everyone back a little bit, Thomas, and remind folks about a law that got changed back in 2019. So this law made it so that uh there's I my understanding is it there's no longer a statute of limitations for abuse, child
That
abuse.
that's correct. So prior to this law, the abuse, you only had 6 years from when you knew or should have known about the abuse.
Okay.
And that's a very limited time period. Now, if you were a minor, you'd have until you were 18. So 18, and then those 6 years from when you knew or should have known that you were abused. So
Okay.
it was a very short window of time, and it eliminated a lot of claims.
Right. Well, and I think what I've read is that oftentimes victims of child abuse, it they don't come forward. They might not even tell their spouses, their family. They'd never tell anybody until they're into adulthood.
Yeah, and well into adulthood, into their 40s, 50s. One of the survivors of the Kurn Hattin abuse, she's in her 80s. She had children. She never said a word to anybody about it.
So what had her finally have the courage to step forward and and bring suit, share her story?
I think, uh, you know, in the recent 2000s with the church abuse cases in the Boston Spotlight program, if
Mm,
you remember that, with the Boston Globe investigative reporters who really broke the story about the number of children who were abused by Boston priests.
mm,
Uh, that really shined a light on child abuse. And then we had the Me Too movement,
mm,
and then there was this undercurrent with Kern Hatton that there was this abuse going on. Uh, it happened all the way that we learned about back into the 50s, and maybe before that. And so people, when it starts becoming a public conversation,
mhm.
you know what, that happened to me too. You
And
know,
so
and then it comes out, and so there was a big movement uh, with the survivors, and one in particular who really worked with the legislature to get this statute changed, because a lot of states started looking at child abuse and the limitations on it because so many people would come forward,
yeah.
and the legislatures one by one throughout the country started, not all of them, but a lot of them started changing their laws. In Vermont, then had hearings with the
Mm.
Senate Judiciary Committee. They took testimony. Um, Evidence was presented about, specifically about Kern Hatton, and then from the experts, the psychiatrists, that talked about why children don't come forward until they're much older.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that I wanna make sure we have in everyone's mind as we have this conversation, because I definitely, in my mind, I thought, well, why wouldn't you come forward? Why wouldn't you say something? Right. And then I'm reading accounts of people who did say something and who were then punished for it, or
Right.
they didn't get help. They were, ran away and got sent back. And then I found this document that you shared with me to be very interesting, the trauma response document. I'm going to share this on my screen here. And I'm reading through these different things about when you experience interpersonal trauma as a child, when it's your caregiver, um, and the ways that that can affect your ability or willingness, your ability to, number one, recognize that what happened to you is wrong, and
Right.
number two, that you need to say something about it.
Right. And then who you're going to say it to, because the way, so let me just go back a little bit and talk a little bit about what Kern Hatton is.
Mhm.
It's was founded in 1894 by a gentleman by the name of Charles Dickinson, and it was supposed to be a safe home for homeless boys.
Mm.
And the school takes children from 5 to 15. It's now co-ed. And there's about 9 cottages with about 95 students on the campus at
Okay.
the present time. So it's residential. So their food, their clothing, their education, their emotional well-being was all controlled when they woke up, when they slept, when what they did during the day, what they ate. It was all very regimented,
Mm,
and it was all controlled. And they had house parents, which they would have people just off the street come in and stay overnight, kind of like residential assistants or in college dorms,
right,
things
like an
like that,
RA.
like
Yep.
an RA, right?
Yep.
So, but unfortunately, there wasn't very good screening practices back then, and the there was a lot of abuse internally from directors, from teachers, um, and when I say abuse, it's physical abuse, doing physical manual labor. It's emotional abuse, telling the kids day in and day out that they're no good, that they're
Right.
miserable
They're not
failures,
wanted.
they're not wanted, nobody wants you, that's why you're here. And when you hear that day in and day out, that has a significant effect on your psyche and your outlook of the world. Um, and then there was also, unfortunately, there was sexual abuse, both
Yeah.
from the administrators, directors, teachers, and student on student. Um,
Well, and
and
that's what I think, Tom, one of the things that was sort of astounding to read, and maybe hindsight is what we benefit from, but a lot of these kids, as far back as from the beginning, came from abusive situations, right? They were taken from abusive homes, they were being sexually abused, they and we know, I mean, psychology, I learned this in Psych 101 in college, that people who are abused often become abusers. And so why wouldn't there be an it seems like there should have been an expectation that the kids might harm each other or themselves.
right. And I just want to correct you on one thing.
Yeah.
Not all the kids came from an abusive
Okay.
environment. Some came from like our my John Doe, the mother was just overwhelmed.
Mm.
Dad committed suicide. Mom had multiple children.
Oh
She
gosh.
just couldn't cope and deal. So this was an alternative to being in a state facility, um, to put these children where they were supposed to be safe and they'd be educated, they'd be given music and religion,
Right. I mean, it
and
looks you look at the pictures and it's like, "Oh man, they're learning all these cool skills and there's all these pictures of them in bands and getting awards and it's like, "Oh, this looks like a cool place for kids."
right, right. But
Okay.
there was a dark side to that.
Okay, so it was sort of, and it's hard because all of the accounts are so different, right? So you've got, like you said, you have a survivor who's in their 80s, and then you have abuses as recently as 2019 being
Correct.
reported.
Right.
So they once there was abuse discovered, is there any evidence that Kern Hatton put anything into place to try to mitigate those problems? Like after Davis was arrested,
Right.
or anything. Is there any record of that? Any evidence of it?
So let's talk about first of all, let's explain to the audience who Davis was and what
Okay.
happened. So up until I believe it was the mid '70s,
Mhm.
there was no DCF. There was no state
Correct.
oversight.
Yes.
So there was no governmental agency overlooking what the school was doing. So you ask, well, why wouldn't they have things in place? Well, they should have, but they failed to.
Mm.
Right? They were supposed to have counselors for these kids, but they didn't. So again, there's nobody outside that school for these children to go to. Now, some say, well, why don't you tell a parent or your mother? They're too afraid to, because they
Mm.
got to go back into this place, and they're afraid that it will get worse if they say anything.
Or maybe it's less bad than, like you said, maybe a state institution or one of these other options.
Right, and you're taking in my John Doe's case, he was 6 years old.
Wow.
So the child believes maybe this is normal. Maybe this is the way I'm supposed to be treated.
Mhm.
So it makes it very difficult to come forward. So there was abuse that occurred throughout the years. There was a bus driver back in the 1960s. He abused I believe at least 12 wards. Um, and there was nothing ever done about that. Now, Mark Davis, he worked at the school from 86 to 89.
Yep, that's when he was arrested.
And he was convicted in 1990.
Okay.
He pled to 8 counts of lewd and lascivious on children.
Yeah.
He's only spent 2 years in
2
prison.
years. Can you believe that, Tom?
No,
2
I can't.
years. How can
No.
you plead down? And you may not know the answer to this, so,
Right.
feel free to say no. Do we have any idea what sentencing is like for these kinds of cases in Vermont?
I don't do criminal law, so I
Okay.
don't know. I know there's maximum minimums and there's a lot of leeway. But
I
look
would
at
be really curious to learn how many of these cases get pled down, because
right,
I found an article, Mark Davis was arrested again
correct,
later for abusing children again.
in
So
2021.
and so so are we giving light sentences to child abusers who then just get out and go abuse more kids? Like,
I believe in this case, and now I don't know all the, I don't know all the facts. I don't know all the evidence in that case is pretty much, destroyed and gone.
right.
Um, so we may never know the answer to some of those questions, but certainly going forward, I think there has to be hard sentencing for anyone who abuses a child.
Oh,
You know,
I think there should be very harsh sentences.
yeah, very hard
So,
sentence on that.
okay, so you just mentioned, evidence is long since been destroyed, right?
Right.
How now, and you just also said, I don't do criminal law, right? So it's important for folks to understand this: the suits you have are civil lawsuits,
Correct.
right? Not criminal. And
Correct.
so, can you share with the audience a little bit about what the difference is? What does it mean for it to be a civil case?
Sure. So,
And especially one that is older, right?
right.
Yeah.
So, in Vermont, we have, state courts, and you have your district courts, and you have family courts, right? Family court is kind of like with your district court, your criminal court, and the superior court is where all the civil cases generally are held. You do have small claims court, but that's only up to $5,000. So, if someone gets rear-ended in an automobile case, it goes to superior court. This type of case, it would be filed in the superior court in the county where the defendant resides. So in this
Mm.
case, this is pending down in Windham County, down in Newfane.
And the
And
defendant is the person who is bringing the case, the victim.
no, the plaintiff is the person
The
bringing the
plaintiff is the
case.
person bringing the
Yep,
case.
yep.
So
And
the
I like to
so
call them survivors too, versus
okay.
versus victims.
Fair.
That's that's just a terminology that people who've been through this prefer
Got it.
versus being a victim. We're survivors. So
Okay. So the case is actually brought where the person being accused resides.
correct, and that's the defendant. So in this case, it would
Okay.
be Kurn Hattin, right?
Got it.
And you're right. So many of the people that
Mm.
were involved here are deceased.
Okay.
So how do we go about proving that, right?
Right.
Well, you have the testimony of your client.
Yep.
And in a case like this, where there are other victims, as far as we know right now, there's at least 50 other victims out there. Um,
Wow.
so if it was just one person out in the woods saying, "Hey, this happened to me," maybe. right? But when you have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 45, 50, then it's just not a coincidence.
Right.
You know, there's a systemic failure in that school. There's something that was wrong
Right.
and been wrong for a very long time. Now, you know, that's one of the difficult things, because the defense is, well, we're a different administration, we didn't know anything, but the institution itself can be held accountable for things that happened in the past. And so you do your best. You know, you have your client talk about names and places and times, and you verify it with other survivors that have had similar experiences with those people, and through that, you know, it's you just put your case on, and you have the expert, a psychologist, talk about what child trauma is.
Yeah.
And then you know, it's going to be up to a jury to say, well, we believe this person, we think they're credible, we believe these things happen, based on the overwhelming evidence of all these survivors.
Now, that's got to be challenging, right? Because this isn't just about, so this is really whether or not you can persuade a jury that you are credible and what you're saying is the truth versus, I mean, it's literally a he said, she said,
Correct.
which
Correct.
sucks, I'm sure, as a lawyer. Yeah, and as a, oh my God, I'm going to get the words wrong.
That's okay.
Plaintiff.
Yeah, as a plaintiff. Yeah.
So the survivors are the plaintiffs.
Correct. Yep.
So that's got to be extra hard, right? Because the survivors have to come out and they have to be like, well, here's my story. Boy, I sure do wish you believe me. I mean, that must be just re-traumatizing, especially
It,
for anybody who reported this back when they were kids.
and that's a difficulty with these cases, because you do, um, you know, they have to relive it, and they have
Yeah.
to relive it multiple times. And you know, so that's the difficult
Mm,
thing
right.
for the survivors, and that's why it takes incredible courage to come forward. And one other point I want to talk to you about, the difference between criminal and civil. Criminal is about punishment, punishment for the crime. Civil, the only thing we can ask for are money damages, right,
Mm,
for the harms and losses that these people suffered. And it's, you're looking for many millions of dollars, because their childhood was taken away from them, that innocence was taken away from them, and it affects every aspect of their life going forward.
yeah. Somebody said, how can you say he said, she said with all the victims? I totally get it. I'm not trying to, this is not me saying I don't believe people, but in the court of law, I mean, I, I'm saying that as a survivor of sexual assault. I was drugged and sexually assaulted in my early
Ugh.
20s. And I had to go, and I reported it, and I did everything that they told me I had to do. I went to court. The victim advocate even told me that I lied. He was like, it was awful. It was totally re-traumatizing. So I just want to make sure everybody watching understands that I'm not coming from a place of misunderstanding. I've literally walked down this road that you have too. And
How did it make you feel
I mean, it was
when
awful. It was it was worse to basically be accused of being a liar by the person who you're supposed to trust, right? Like my experience with the court system was like their experience reporting to the people in charge of the school.
right?
Do you know what I
And
mean?
what ultimately happened,
The case was dismissed for lack of sufficient evidence.
and how'd that make you feel?
Sucked.
Yeah.
It really sucked. And you know what I did do, and what it sounds like some of the survivors of Kurn Hattin did was I actually went and worked with an organization, the Women's Rape Crisis Center. There used to be a law on the books that said you couldn't dance with a drink in your hands. And it was put in place during Prohibition. And BPD started enforcing it to try to deal with all the out of control college students. And so what happened was people started getting drugged, and it wasn't just women, it was men. It became rampant in Burlington, and it happened to me. It happened to my friend that I was out with. It happened to tons of people. And so we lobbied to the Vermont state legislature to have that language removed from our books, and the police stopped enforcing it. And, because that's the best you can do, is like try to do something good and help other people, right? Just like you're the survivors that you're representing, this is what they can do now, is like,
Right.
okay, we have to bring this to light. We have to show what's going on here.
Right. And that's the empowerment. At least now they're being heard. Whether or not we can win, that's a different story. But at least they're having their voice heard. And yeah, because they are going to be challenged. They're going to be made out to be liars, and well, there's no evidence what you say happened. Well, yeah, there is. My life. This is the way I am because of this happened.
Well,
And
and
so, and that's one point before we go further, is that in a lot of these cases, these people sometimes have talked about it with, they may have been on
mm,
counseling for one thing or another. So there is documentary
yeah,
evidence that, well, we just reported. Well, why would somebody go, as you know, what the experience is? Why would somebody go through all
you
this,
wouldn't.
come out in public, and be known for being a survivor of such a terrible,
Yeah.
act? Why would you go through all that?
So, would you tell people a little bit, and so in doing my research on this and seeing, what has been done, trying to figure out if anything was done before
Right.
the last couple years. And would you say a little bit about the difference between, because I looked up, there was another group of attorneys, and I thought that they had brought suit against Kurn Hattin. And then you said, no, that's a misconception. They made claims, or they filed claims. Can you share with the audience a little bit about what the difference is between what's happened in the past, filing claims, and why what you're doing now is so much different, or like how you're taking the next step?
Absolutely. So there's an attorney by the name of Kim Doherty, and she has the majority of the survivors, and she has made a claim. And what a claim is you write a letter to Kurn Hattin or their attorney, and they say, Kurn Hattin did A, B, C, and D wrong, and therefore we believe Kurn Hattin should uh, recognize what they did wrong and pay money damages to resolve the claims. Uh, we I took a different approach. My approach was to file a lawsuit in court, and to start the process of litigating the case. And so that's where we are. We've filed a lawsuit. Kurn Hattin has answered it, and we're in the process of doing what's called discovery, getting
Mm.
information about these things, these claims.
Can Do you get access to like old records and files of Curtin Hatton? Can you I mean, not that they have any of that stuff still,
We've
but
asked for them. We've gotten, they claim everything's been destroyed. But we do have certain, Kern Hatton did keep bulletins. And it's interesting, in some of the bulletins, it says, it talks about keeping the children separate in the bathroom, and having a monitor while they're in the bathroom. A lot of these abuses between the
yes,
children
happened
occurred
in the
in the
bathroom.
bathrooms.
And that's where it said, where there's no cameras, the staff isn't in there, right? Because those are
Correct.
places where they're supposed to have privacy. And
Right.
y- oh my God. I mean, then if you have somebody in there, then you have another set of
Wow, that
problems.
can be another issue, right?
Oh, good golly, Miss Molly.
So
It is, I wonder, just out of curiosity, one of the comments, it says, hours and hours of testimony with details and specific staff that were proven pedophiles. What is this, like a class action? Is it different? Does everyone have to file a different claim or lawsuit? Like, is everybody
great
together?
question.
Okay.
No, so in order to have a class action, That's when a group of people have the same harm in the same way from the same thing. So, for
Mm,
example, let's say there's a product and it burns people.
okay.
Okay. And
Yep.
you got 500 people or thousands of people that were burned from this product.
Yeah.
So, all those people would get grouped together. For example, you've seen in the asbestos cases, we know
Okay.
asbestos causes a certain type of lung cancer,
Right.
asbestosis, right? So, all those people that have that would file a claim together.
Okay.
Because everybody's abuse was different in an experience in a different way, it may have been from different people. Each person has to file an individual claim, and each case is decided on its own merits. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just trying to figure out. I mean, obviously it makes sense, right? Like logically I can make that work in my head. But I what is there's a isn't there a legal term about when you have so many people telling the same story? There's like some expression that ah, I guess
It's
what
escaping me.
what I'm trying to think of is like you want the most amount, and I would think that in a civil case like this is what I'm trying to like my
Sure.
brain is going too fast for me to process my question. You would think that in a circumstance like this, you would want the most number of people to have it be like more powerful.
Right.
Is there a benefit to having more cases, even if it's not a class action lawsuit?
Oh, absolutely. There is. But I take what cases that I have, and right now I just have the one I've
Yeah,
talked to other survivors, and and I think programs like yours and the Vermont Digger article, getting the word out, shining that spotlight, and
yeah,
as this case goes forward, it's gonna be picked up, and hopefully others will come forward. The priest abuse cases, I got a call last year about one,
mm,
um, and that gentleman was watching the news one day, and he sees the priest that abused him being arrested, and he almost like just froze in his tracks,
oh,
and
wow.
that's what caused him to come forward. So you
S
never know what's going to trigger somebody to bring and we repress these memories, right? We push them way back down, and then one day all of a sudden something could trigger it. Somebody says something, you see something in the news, and that's the trigger that causes that person to come forward.
Okay, so you have one open suit currently,
Correct.
and then you've talked to some other folks who are maybe considering it,
Correct.
and then and that's the only one that you're aware of here in Vermont?
No, there's 50 others
Oh,
that Kim Doherty has that are
but
claims
right.
that haven't been put into lawsuit. So she's trying to work those out with Kurn Hattin,
Oh,
and
okay.
I don't know where they are
In the process of, like,
in
a
that process.
negotiation or
Correct,
whatever.
correct.
Well, and I imagine now we talked about this a little bit on before we went on air, and I said, "Is the goal to have the place closed down? Is the goal to make them change?" I'm sure that this isn't just about money for people. I'm sure that there
Correct.
is a secondary ask that's going along with, monetary damages. Can you share a little bit about that or what any negotiations have looked like, what people are asking for?
I can't talk about specific negotiations, but what I can do is say that the the main purpose why people come forward is a to give them a voice, and to empower themselves about what happened. Two, to shine a spotlight on it to let others know that they're not alone, that it's
Yeah,
happened to others. Uh, the goal is not to bankrupt Kern Hatton. That is not our goal.
yeah,
The goal is to make change for the better. So this doesn't happen again. Like you said, this has happened again most recently is 2019. So they still don't get it.
Right.
You're talking from the 1940s to 2019, and abuse is still occurring there.
Well,
And
and
that's why
that's
they lost their resident. Now they won't admit to this, but this is why the state took away their residential. I mean, the licensing for the behavioral aspect.
right.
There's still a residential facility, but they can't do the counseling behavioral stuff.
Yeah, I saw that it was reported that their license was taken away. That part of
Right.
their license was the residential treatment,
Correct.
and the is it Harrison is the current
Correct. Steve
guy,
Harrison. Yep.
said that's because they that they were in a process voluntarily of relinquishing it because they don't provide treatment. And
Right.
I was like, wait a second, you're admitting you don't provide treatment, but you're taking in kids that have problems and you're
Disabilities.
not
Right.
providing them treatment?
Correct.
Then why are you taking them then? Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy.
Okay, so like
I believe they did have counselors that they were using.
mm,
So, but they want to disavow that. So
wh-
let, let the audience be the judge as to. I think it's more of the outcry of what happened, and that's why the state finally took the steps that they did.
well, and
Um,
I think, one of the things that's so disturbing about this is there's a need for places like this. I mean, there is
right.
a
Absolutely.
reality to the fact that we have a number of orphans and kids that have trouble
Right.
and, broken homes and broken families. And our adoption foster system is broken. We make it impossible for good people to adopt children for some reason. Uh, so, so there is a need. But I mean, it's not just this, right? We saw, the mental institutions got exposed back in the 80s. And yeah, I don't know if you remember that Geraldo Rivera story, like that kind of broke it all wide open.
Right.
I'm dating myself right now, but so this is not new. This is not new information. We've known, I mean, all the addiction places in California, a bunch got shut down because they were abusing people. There was people, treatment facilities basically selling drugs to their people that were, and
Well, in
how is there
Massachusetts, they were experimenting on 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 children, you know,
how is
and
this
not telling them.
how is
Yeah,
this happening?
Vermont had a history with eugenics, right? And nobody really wants to talk about that, but Vermont had a history of eugenics. So so yes, there's a need, but you need to have the protocols, the safety protocols in place to make sure you can help these children, have the
And that's
right
what
help.
is it just like because the state somehow at least at one point was involved. Where's the breakdown?
Right.
How are we not having security protocols put in place? How is the state not doing something? Like, how does this happen?
I think that
Not that you could
um,
answer that.
yeah, that's a tough question. I think the state dropped the ball here. I do, but hopefully, with folks like you getting elected, that you can affect change by
Yeah.
making sure that things don't fall through the cracks. And I understand
Yeah.
there are a lot of great state employees, and child protective services is a tough job to do on a
Yes.
daily basis. So I don't want to totally throw them under the bus, but
And obviously, I want to be really clear. There are a lot of stories from people from Kern Hatton that did not have these
correct.
experiences,
Yep.
that loved their experience there, that have, very fond memories, right? So,
Even some of these survivors have fond memories. They've bonded with the school.
because the reality is human beings need identity and belonging.
Right.
And that's how you have people who end up in gangs and things like that. It's better to belong to a gang than to be alone.
Right. And even negative attention, studies show that children who act out, they want attention, and even if they get negative attention, they'll
It's
take
better than
any
nothing.
and better than nothing. Now, one of your viewers asked about it. I believe it was a Jessica Smith. I don't know what uh, what the outcome of what that was. I just want to get back to
Yeah.
your viewer and just get a response to
So
that
who is
question. So
Jessica? So Jessica Lee Smith, is this the one that I read? I think she committed suicide. Was this one of the stories I read about?
there have been other survivors who have, and that's unfortunate of survivors, is that they turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol, and sometimes it gets so bad that they do turn to suicide. That is not uncommon. Um,
It is really interesting. I'm reading some of the comments. Um, oh, interesting. Please make them charged criminally for false reporting. Isn't that interesting? Especially when a false report could lead to a hell. What does that mean? A false reporting.
so I'm not sure if that's speaking about if somebody reports that they were abused and it turns out to be false. I'm not sure if that's what your viewer is
That's why
speaking about.
I'm trying to understand exactly by the
Right.
comments. Okay, so this person is Jessica, and she's an advocate.
Okay.
I agree, false reporting is very bad, and I do think that there should be criminal
And
punishment for false reporting,
and that
particularly
happens.
for adults.
And we saw that with the lacrosse players from, I forget what school it was, but
Duke.
Duke, yeah, and
Was it Duke?
they were falsely accused and ruined. So yes, there's a double-edged sword there as well.
Oh, and making up something to CPS to lash out at someone. See, this is the thing. We actually have a friend who was falsely accused of hurting someone, and it was because there is this new phenomenon of kids uh reporting their parents because they're
Right,
mad at them to
right.
get them in trouble.
And the difficulty there is that because they're mandatory reporters, once they get an allegation,
They
they
have to
have
go
to
through all the way.
investigate, and they got to go through all these steps. And I've had parents who were going through divorces where they were falsely accused of abuse, and it wasn't true, and
See,
that's terrible. That's just terrible as
and
well.
this is one of the things where, when you said, why would people, come out with a story like
Right.
this and deal with it? There are people who out there who are not well,
There are.
who, who are vindictive and vengeful. And this is like, what worse thing can you be on this planet than a person who hurts children?
Right.
You're like the worst person on the planet, basically,
Correct.
according to everybody.
Right.
And so to ruin somebody's life that way, I think is really, really messed up.
Right.
And I do know that there are a lot of problems with CPS, and right, like we want them to have some teeth so they can help kids that are being abused, but then they end up going too
Too
far in
far.
cases where people
They
are
should.
not, right?
Right.
Like, oh
Yeah.
my god, this is the problem with the government. It's the problem and the solution at the same time sometimes.
Right. And that's
But
why what I try and do is I sit down with a client and I have an in-depth conversation with them, and we go over every instance,
yeah.
and if somebody can give dates and times and locations and recount, and and it's verified in their history that these things had occurred, and these people did work there at that time, and then there's others reporting of the similar things type happening, then that gives more credibility than, like I said, if you're just the lone wolf in the woods saying,
Yeah.
yeah, I was by this person, but I got no real facts and I can't really remember stuff. So
So what happens, is there a support group for survivors of abuse at Kurn Hattin? Is there like a group of folks that
There,
have
I
started?
believe there was and there still may be a Facebook group of survivors.
No kidding.
Yeah, they have. There is, I believe, a network out there. There's also, and I forget the acronym. I can get it for you later. But there is through the church abuse, there was a survivor network that does not just church abuse survivors, but any survivor of child abuse. You can join them as well. Um, and I'm forgetting the acronym that's out there, but a Google search will pull that
We'll
up.
pull it
So
up. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, interesting. I think that, oh yeah, Kern Hatton Legacy of Abuse. Okay, so there's some places people should go and definitely check out. And I want to just share too. Hang on, your website, Thomas. So for anybody watching who is a survivor, oh wait, that's not you, is it?
nope, that's
That
not me.
is not
That's
me.
Thomas D. Bixby.
That
Yeah.
is a silly. I'm so funny. Here it is.
I'm the
Where?
top one there. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Whoop, there we go.
Yeah.
So this is Tom's website, you guys. Definitely, if you know of somebody who is a survivor, if you have heard about this, share Tom's information, share this website, reach out, help out, however you can. I think
And
that it.
I do have a link on my website for specifically for the Kurn Hattin
Oh, you
folks.
do? Is it under
Yeah, it's got the
services or
um yeah,
resources?
I believe it's under services.
Oh,
Oh, let's see.
yeah,
It's yeah,
under
yeah,
sexual
and
abuse,
there's
Kern
Kurn
Hatton.
Hattin link right there.
Okay.
And you get the Boy Scouts and
Yep.
the church as well. So, but
Well,
yeah,
and
if you click on the Kurn Hattin, that will should pull it up.
you know what it really seems like what I've been learning, not just with this, but with some of the other conversations that I've had with folks recently, is that it seems as though people who are abusers, people who are unwell, seek out jobs in institutions like this because they have access to vulnerable people.
Yeah, and in fact, some of the abuses in this case were children at Kurn Hattin, got older, got a job at Kurn Hattin, and then became an abuser of children. So it was like a cyclical. Right, and
Wow.
it was unfettered access to kids, and that's why you have it in the church, and that's why you have it in the Boy Scouts, and you have it in other similar types of institutions, um, where you do have access, unfettered access to children. Church groups, doesn't matter what denomination, it's all across the board. It's a terrible blight on our society.
It's very true.
Yeah.
Jessica asked, why aren't the survivors speaking out more? Are they being gagged or something? So I don't know, maybe the 50 folks that have a claim or other survivors, um, are they allowed to talk about it? Probably not while it's being litigated.
Actually, I don't have a limit on my client from talking about it. I
Okay.
think that's part of the healing process. So I don't know what Attorney Doherty's rule is on
Mm,
that.
okay.
As long as they're not talking about the specific case or the details of their particular case and where we are, but as to the abuse itself, I think that's part of the healing process is
Yeah.
talking about it.
I think,
So
yeah, it might be, an opportunity for people to heal and get together. I don't know. I don't
So
know if
you're not
that
the
makes
only one
sense or
out
not,
there.
but
Now, in Kern
yeah.
Hattin, they give platitudes and they say, "Oh, well, we're here for the survivors and we're going to investigate this fully and stuff." But and when it comes to the litigation, it's the reverse.
Yeah.
They're tooth and nail litigation
Well,
tactics.
it seems like they're not really cooperating, which
Right.
I guess to a certain extent I understand, but I would think that if you are really about kids, that and you care as much as you say you would, that you would want to as vigorously root out anything destructive like
Right.
that, you would be more wanting to root that stuff out. I
Well, and that's exactly what the church did. The church actually, finally they were kind of forced to with the
mm,
spotlight, but they came up with a list of all their abuses in every state. There
wow.
are there are listservs. You can type in a priest, and it will come up and tell you. Um,
Oh, wow.
and if you have church abuse case now, you tell the diocese about it. They will investigate it, and they may very well, their first reaction may be, okay, let's try and resolve it, rather than do the whole litigation aspect of it. So, but Kern Hatton hasn't taken that practice. They're saying, okay, we'll litigate it, and not try to come to an understanding and a healing.
Yeah, see, that makes it seem weird to me. That feels more suspicious. Like,
Right.
your unwillingness to be cooperative makes me more suspicious of you, and
Sure.
is that the wrong way to think about it as an
No,
attorney?
I call it the ostrich in the sand. We don't want to know. We're sticking our head in the sand. We don't want to know. We don't know anything.
Yeah.
We don't want to deal with it, and just want to talk about all the good things that we're doing. Well, it doesn't work like that.
Do you, and you may not know the answer to this, but is there a retention requirement for institutions like this on documentation and paperwork? So, like, as I'm an accountant by trade,
Right.
so I tell people that they should keep everything for 9 years. Some
Right.
rules are 7 years, but technically the IRS can audit you forever. So, but with all the rules, I tell my clients keep stuff for 9 years.
Right.
That's the good rule of thumb. Um, but that's with like regular businesses that don't have any medical or educational or any kind of retention requirements. Does an institution like this, should they have records of all of this stuff?
That's a great question. I'm not sure if the state requires retention of any records in particular,
Hmm.
because they're a private institution, and at least for the decades that predate, supervision by a state agency,
Right.
uh, they could do whatever they wanted to. But I
So
think it would only benefit, to, and actually they did have some records, but it was
I
very
would think they would
like
have to.
grades. They have like your grades.
See, that's
Uh,
what I'm like, because if you are not like, I even know my friends that homeschool and stuff, they still
right.
have to report to the state that they're educating their kids.
Right. So there are some very basic information,
Okay.
and in some of those old report cards, I don't know if you remember the old written report cards, are like some little comments and stuff.
Yep.
Um,
Erica
like
talks too
mine
much.
was talk. Yeah,
Yes.
I was just gonna say that. I got that all the time. We talk so much in class. Uh, so, but they did have some of those types of records. Um, and that's what they also say is, well, we their defense in our case is twofold. One, it's, well, he was damaged when he came to us, so all his damage wasn't done from us, it was done before. And then their argument is, well, he left, and so any damage that happened after, right? But nothing happened when he was here. And I call that, don't look at the man behind the curtain, defense. So
Well, and there is a certain, there you look at, I'm reading through, I basically read everything I could find online
sure.
about any allegations, anything that the attorneys had put out. There's this really the Kim Doherty put out this like, you know,
The chart.
31 page
Yep.
presentation, I think, that
Right.
she must have given to the state house
Yep, for the judiciary to help change the
or
law. That was part of
DCF.
it. Yep.
Yep,
Yep.
exactly. And you're just going, "Oh my god, this is."
Right. So that's where the again,
And there's a part of me, okay. There's a part of me that goes, "Well, you can't know everything that's going on all the time." And then I'm like, "But over and over and over again, it's being reported." And they're just like,
that's where the institutional failure comes in. and they need to be
Yeah.
held accountable,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah.
for that, and to make affect change going forward, so it
Well,
doesn't happen to another child.
this is what I do know. I really hope, if nothing else, if just this little podcast can help encourage survivors to go share their story, to call you, to call their, I don't know, their therapist or their priest or whoever they need to talk to about this, and get the courage to come forward.
Right.
It is hard, it is scary. There are going to be people who say, that they don't believe you or whatever, but
Right.
I just think that,
But the more that come out, the more change we can affect,
yeah,
and
yeah,
if there was more women like you from the incident that happened to you, then hopefully you wouldn't have had to go through that experience that you went through,
right.
right? And,
Well, and that's, I mean, that's ultimately what this is about, right? Like, if we don't stick up for each other, one of the things that, if there is a place like Kern Hatton, where's the community? Are they
exactly.
helping? Are they participating? Are they showing up and helping mentor the kids? Or are they saying, well, somebody else is paying for it and I paid my taxes, so I don't have to do anything about it,
Right. Or are
you
we gonna do
know?
the bare minimum and just and put rags on them and give them, you know, bad food and almost like a prison system, right?
I'm
So is that what we want for a community to educate these lost children,
in
or do we want to, foster growth and develop and help them become better human beings,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Well, and I think that, this is my plug and my pitch for fostering and adopting. All of my friends, all of my friends that are, in their 30s and 40s, and they're like, I'm not having kids, and they're married and they're making all this money together, and then they don't do anything. I'm like, adopt or foster, you guys. Like, there are kids out there in California. There was something like 500,000 kids in hotel rooms
Ugh,
because there was no one adopting them or fostering them. Like, the system is so
it's
broken,
broken.
and it takes all of us actually s- doing what we say we think matters, and moving with our feet and
Right.
our dollars and our time.
Yeah.
So that's my little,
Plug.
that's, I mean, my husband and I work with Catalyst Collective. They help young people, particularly at-risk youth, find their purpose. One kid, so this organization, Catalyst Collective, has this program called the Purpose Project. And what they've identified is that every human being needs identity, belonging, and purpose in order to really thrive. And that if you can find your purpose, if you can identify your natural gifts and talents and what you're passionate about, that can help you find your purpose. And when
Mhm.
you start acting out and living that purpose, you find your friend group, you find your
Right.
tribe, you find that belonging. And that also helps shape your identity, right?
Yep.
Who are you? What do you do? How do you contribute to the world? How do you show up? And one young man in particular was getting in tons of fights. He'd been, it was gonna, go to juvie because he kept getting in fights and assaults, and he'd been arrested over and over again, and nobody could figure out what to do. Well, after talking with this young man, it turned out he was actually sticking up for kids who were smaller than him, who were being bullied. So he wasn't just bullying people, he wasn't just
Right.
being a jerk, he was actually defending people. And so what they were able to do with this young man was say, you have a heart to defend people. You have a heart to defend the underdog. You would make a great police officer, firefighter, lawyer,
Right.
social worker, right? Like, all of these different things that you could do. And now this young man has gone on to help mentor others. He's turned his life around. He's focused,
That's great.
be, because someone took 5 minutes to stop and have a conversation with him,
Right.
instead of just write him off as one of those bad kids.
Throwaways. Yep.
And
Yeah.
so, what I would love to see out of all of this is for there to be a real calling for people to be participating in the lives of the next generation. We're responsible for making sure that they're taught and educated and safe. And so
Right.
let's not just, think that somebody else is going to do it for us.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And if there's anybody out there that can help somebody that's been, a victim or a survivor of abuse, then please help out.
Yeah,
You know,
you know what? If anybody watching, if you are a therapist, a counselor, social worker, or something like that, uh, I would also encourage you to reach out to Tom and let him know your availability so that when these survivors do come and share their story, when they do get the courage to come out, that there is an apparatus, there's a structure there to help people.
sure. No, I
Some
appreciate
folks
that.
that they can refer, that you
Sure.
can refer to.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so what else, Tom, before we wrap up for the night, what didn't I ask that I should have? What did I miss? What do you want to make sure gets said to the audience tonight?
Just that if either yourself or someone else who's been through this and suffered through this, you don't have to suffer alone. Come forward, speak out, whether it's to me or Kim Doherty or any lawyer that can help you out with this. Please come forward. And again, to the pitch that if you are in the mental health field, if you could come out and step up for these survivors and or any survivor in general, but mostly these Kurn Hattin survivors, because the children are our biggest asset, and to abuse a child, you're taking away a life. So,
And
and Eric, I can't thank you enough for
yeah,
having me on and talking about it. I know it's a heavy issue. I know it's a little bit different than what you do, and I want to thank you too for sharing, because that took a lot of courage for you to share your personal experience, what you went through, and that's helpful to others who may have had a similar experience
yeah.
to you. So thank you for that.
Well, and that's what, people standing up gives other people courage to stand up.
Right.
And if that's the only thing that I can do, then it's worth it to
Sure.
me. And I gosh, I'm getting emotional now because this just makes me so sad because especially reading people's accounts, right? It doesn't end in their childhood. They
Right.
take it into adulthood. And when we see, one of the highest rates of drug abuse in the country here in Vermont, we had the highest increase in overdose deaths. We have a huge increase in suicides. That not for everybody, thank God, but so many people lose their lives to drugs and alcohol and suicide,
Right.
and so this abuse creates it just creates so many more problems and so many more victims. And so bless you for what you're doing, Tom. I just want to say I appreciate you. I'm glad that you're taking this on, and that you're not just letting this go, that
No.
you're taking part in this. And so I
Well,
just thank you too.
I appreciate that, and they need to be held accountable. So
Yes.
that's what it's
Yep.
about. So
All right. So everybody, go to, let me see, where did I? So TCB Law. So before we go,
VT. Yep.
so TCB Law VT,
Yep.
Tom, is it your middle name?
No, tcblaw.com.
What does it
Yep.
stand for, TCB?
Thomas Crawford Bixby. Crawford's my
Thomas
middle
Crawford
name.
Bixby.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, all right.
Yeah.
I like it. Okay, so tcblaw.com, Thomas Bixby. Make sure you don't do what I do and click on the
Go to
other
the
Thomas
D.
Bixby.
He's out of
Rutland.
state, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, you're in
Different
Rutland,
state.
right?
I am in Rutland.
You're in
Yep.
Rutland. Okay, and I think you have a Facebook page
I do.
too. Oops, not
Nope.
that. What
That's
is
not me.
that is not what I was looking for. Let's see.
Be careful what you
Um,
click, Eric.
oh, that's what I clicked on. Then that's what it brought me to. Okay, that's
Wow.
weird. So you have a Facebook page too.
I do.
And what is that one called?
Um,
Is that the
my
same?
goodness. I think it's TCB law.
Here,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm gonna
Or
unshare my screen just in case,
sure, that's a good
because
idea.
I don't want to do so.
Yeah. You never know what's going to pop up. Yeah, as your attorney, I advise you not to.
That's happened before where I'm like,
Oh
oh,
boy.
what is
Whoop,
that? What
whoop,
is that?
whoop.
Or like I had a message up, a comment, and then I was like, oh, whoops. I hope nobody's reading that. People are wild out there. Okay, here we go. Facebook. Nope, that's not you. So there's multiple ways to find you. You
Right.
are on Facebook.
Yeah,
You
punch me in on
are
Facebook. I do
in
have a I don't know if it's a blog or a chat, but it's called Law Talk as well. So,
okay.
But
Oh, is
yeah,
that why this isn't
if you go
letting
to
me cooperate?
my website, that will get you there too.
Oh,
So
that's much smarter than what I'm doing.
it's
That's
okay.
way smarter than what I'm doing. Let's see. Here, we'll go back to your website.
I think it's there. It should be.
Oh, look at Facebook.
Yep.
Boom.
There you go. Oh,
Oh,
you know.
your newest client. I saw
Yeah, my
this
newest
earlier.
client. That's Anakin. That's my newest client.
Oh, Skywalker.
Yes.
Oh my God,
Well, Darth Vader. Darth Vader. Yeah.
you are also a nerd. Now I know this about you, Bixby.
My secret's
Now
out.
I know. I love it. My husband and I pick on each other about who's the bigger nerd, and I'm like, "You're the bigger nerd," and he's like, "You have a Star Trek movie box set, Erica. You're the bigger nerd." And I'm like, "No." But I like that I was actually looking through this. So you've got a bunch of cases that you're following and you're showing the outcome of. So I think that
Right.
that's
Yep.
cool.
Yep. I do that as well, trying to educate the
Yep,
public a
and
bit.
that's what it's about, right? Okay, so
Yep.
everybody check out Tom's website, check out Facebook, share this video, like it. Someone asked if you're single.
No, married for many years. So thank you though. I
Oh,
appreciate that.
that is
That's sweet.
flattering. That is nice. I like that. Um, all right. Well, again, Tom, thanks for coming on tonight. Thanks for sharing what's kind of going on. Do me a favor, keep me updated on your cases. Let me know
Absolutely.
how this goes. I would love to have you back, in a few months or when you get some movement
Sure.
and
Yep.
have everybody updated on the case.
That'd be great. And
All right.
again, good luck on Tuesday.
Thank you, sir. I
All right.
appreciate it. All right,
Thank you.
everybody, have a good
Goodbye.
night. Tom, hang out with me for just one
Sure.
second. I'm gonna take us out with the theme song and then we're gonna get
Okay.
out of here.